Hello, welcome to a new series, a new actual play. I have been doing Critical Role live reactions and analysis, and I've been doing that for a little bit over a year at this point, and people have asked me for a long time, when is another one coming, a different actual play? And I don't think it'll surprise people that are kind of, that are in the space, have some opinions on it, that I chose Fantasy High. And I actually have a slight bit of history with Fantasy High. Before starting Critical Eyes, it was the only actual play I had seen more than one episode of. Now, that episode count was 2. I watched about, I believe, 2 episodes. So I will have a vague recollection of what's happening at first. I'm super excited for Fantasy High. I did really like the 2 episodes that I watched. It's just when I'm not making a video or when I'm not live streaming it, I lose motivation for some reason to watch them. So I'm very, very excited to see this, to see where it goes, and to see what I know is a very different style from Critical Role. I feel like at this point I've sort of come to understand what the style of Critical Role and Matt Mercer is, and I know that Brennan is very, very different from that, or at least I've heard. So I'm psyched. Let me know if you guys have any comments, thoughts on the format. I've done a little bit of figuring it out over the past month or so, but it's still a work in progress. So if the editing is maybe not including enough context, or it's not including enough of my thoughts, let me know in the comments, and let's get into it. So this is Fantasy High, Episode 1.
Welcome, one and all, to Dimension 20. Our cast of players will assume the role of heroic adventurers embarking on a dangerous quest. Our story takes place in the world of Spyre. Spyre mostly conforms to your expectations for a world of swords and sorcery, with one notable exception, and that's Elmville. Elmville is a little town in a nation called Solace. Solace may be home to elves, orcs, dwarves, and gnomes, but it resembles more of a 1950s through 1980s America. There are several schools in Elmville.
Okay, you know that I... So I already said that I watched like the first episode of two of this, but when I was watching it before, I was more watching it as like light entertainment. I wasn't taking it too seriously. But if you've seen any of my other shows, you know that I have to look at this big, beautiful map. Number one, I think it's like maybe good choice is the wrong word. But I actually really like the choice of just making things these vague regions. I think that people get too obsessed with like trying to demarcate the exact location of things. You know what I'm saying? Like they're like, oh, the border is like right here along this line, and there's a town here, and they're this border town, and the roads go exactly here, and the river follows this line, and all of that is great. All of it's totally great for world building, especially to know some exacts, because then you can sort of use those exact things to generate events and conflict and drama. But when you're showing a map to an audience, whether that's, a YouTube audience or more likely your players, I really like this more vague map. I'm always a proponent of just don't give your players a world map. Like, I think that you are locking yourself too far in if you give your players a world map. You're kind of constraining yourself as a DM. I really like having my players draw their own world maps as things progress and as things go along. I think that's really fun. And this sort of looks like what I would expect a player to draw. It's like there's like these very kind of broad regions. There's the Mountains of Chaos, the Swamps of Ruin are just like a circle. Frostheim is just like a general white blob on the top. Red Waste, Forest of the Nightmare King, Baronies, they're all just these like circular, vague regions. And then closer to the actual star of the show, Elmville, you start to have things that are much more detailed. Bastion City, Haraway Bay, Runekeep. Like, I'm sure that these sorts of features all exist within the Baronies or the Mountains of Chaos or the Forest of the Nightmare King, potentially. But our players don't know that, and frankly, they don't need to care about that. They don't need to care about that until they get there. So having these very... These maps that sort of increase in vagueness the further away you get from your players, I think is really cool. I think it's very reasonable in fiction. Exact map-making technology is a very new, modern invention. And I think it gives a lot of flexibility for you as a DM. And I also think it gives an amount of flexibility for the players' minds, right? It's much easier to conceptualize the baronies and actually work them into your thought process if they're this vague blob rather than a detailed list of things of okay, here's each individual city. Oh, that city's part of the baronies, not the Red Waste. There's a city right here that's in the Red Waste, not the baronies. They're different. That can be overwhelming. It can make your players less likely to engage with your world in a detailed way.
You find the biggest and meanest man there.
Yes, Papa.
You go up to him and you drive your fist hard and strong right into his stomach and send him to his knees.
Yes, Papa. That's what I'll do. Just like you would have done if you ever went to school.
That's right, my sweet boy. Now, I have a little present for you if you're so inclined.
Papa.
You see, he reaches into a bag and pulls out a red and white Egg Fort letter jacket for the Blood Rush team, the Egg Fort Owlbears.
Oh, Papa!
He hands it to you and says, "Oh, my boy, my sweet boy."
This character's hilarious. It's awesome. But more particularly, I remember generally this kind of sequence of each of them has kind of an individual scene to themselves, which is, I think, going at a very, or not a problem necessarily, but something that I think every campaign has to address, which is not only how do the characters meet and learn about each other, but also how do the players learn about the other players' characters, because in the fiction, it's very common that there will be large chunks of time during which the characters are interacting essentially off screen, right? Where the players can't see those interactions. So in most campaigns, the characters are going to know each other better than the players actually know the other characters, if that makes sense. Within the context of the fiction, they're having, conversations around the campfire, they're making jokes on long, boring travel sequences, they're talking, in this case, probably between class. All of these things are just kind of the boring, everyday, get-to-know-you type conversations and things that the characters are doing, if we think about it, but we never see it, so the players themselves don't get the benefit of knowing those other characters, and that can make it harder to interact as a party that knows and trusts each other, like they should, likely, because the player doesn't know the other characters as well. And so every DM, every campaign, I don't necessarily think they need to address it, but it's something to consider, something to think about. It's one of the reasons that I am totally down with players talking about plans over the table, especially if we're not roll initiative, but then we're ending the session, right? If there is implied space in between sessions, then I love for my players to talk about strategies, talk about all of these things out of session, because their characters would be talking out of session. And all of that, as that applies to this specifically, is I think that these little kind of mini scenes of displaying each character when essentially no one else is looking, right? It's kind of the what we do in the dark sort of trope of how are the characters in their natural habitat when they're not around the rest of the party. That gives the players an idea of who the characters are that even their characters don't have yet, which gives them a lot more, not necessarily control, but I think a really good amount of knowledge that at first is going to be more knowledge than their character has, but will eventually kind of come to meet their character. It's a really good way to kind of get the player up to speed on things that their character would observe and would pick up on relatively quickly.
Okay.
You're only for humans who look like you. Have you ever looked at all your friends, Mom? Do any of them look different?
How can I be racist against an elf? I never met one. I don't even know an elf.
Exactly, you've never met one.
Okay, so
you know
this is
what?
because-
If Helio was here right now, he would pop out of a corn husk. He would pop into a million different pieces of himself, and he would spread those pieces around to all parts of the city. He wouldn't just be hanging out here.
Okay. I'm not smart enough to go toe-to-toe with you, Kristen. I'm a simple woman. I haven't read the book as close. I'm not chosen, so...
You're really smart, Mom, okay? I love you, and I think you're really smart. And I think you're relying on, I don't know very much.
There's an immediate kind of tonal difference in how Brennan communicates as his NPCs compared to Matt Mercer. I've seen it twice now with Applebee's mom, and I can't remember Lou's character's name, but Lou's character's dad. Lou's character's dad immediately being like, I'm going to die soon. You know that you'll outlive me. You know how we are going to write our name on the world. Like, getting very sort of meta with it, and I'm sure that Kristen Applebee's mom would never actually say, I'm not smart enough to go toe-to-toe with you. That's not typically, at least from my perspective, that's not typically how people talk. And Matt, all of Matt's NPCs, I think talk like people. I think he's very good at thoroughly characterizing an NPC down to the most minute detail, whereas this is but that said, I think sometimes it can be kind of hard to pick up on things or to differentiate things or to understand kind of what this NPC is all about at first, because they kind of are a regular person, whereas these are almost more caricature-like, where I am instantly understanding the relationship between Kristen and her mom, or I think it's not Finian. God, Fabius? Lou. Lou's character and his dad. I'm instantly understanding. I mean, Brennan even said something to the effect of that's how we relate to each other, right? Something that no person would ever say. It's this almost hyper stylized way of communicating that I think is, I'm already kind of understanding what some of the core differences are going to be here. I already knew that Fantasy High and Dimension 20 in general is going to be, more tightly edited. It's going to be, more packed, more concise. And all of that would imply a higher efficiency. But this is the first instant example that I'm seeing where the way that Brennan communicates as his NPCs already has been incredibly efficient at communicating the exact parts of them. And even when Brennan is doing these intro sequences, he said to Allie, describe your character, maybe describe your character's room, immediately honing in on the things that might be most efficient in communicating who this character is.
You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna sing a song. You see, your mom grabs a little harp and your dad grabs a little ukulele, and they start sort of harmonizing, and they go when you feel a little mad, it's probably because you really feel sad. Just remember your mom and dad, and then you'll start to feel real glad. That's right. Okay. That's right, bud. So just sing that song around the other high schoolers if you start feeling upset.
Okay, I gotta go.
You see Gorgug, you walk out, you see your mom right at the door, hands you a little tin flower. And you see she says, Mal, back at Oak Shield, you had it was a little bit of a hurdle trying to, we had a little bit of a hard time trying to make pals, right? But making pals is just like making a flower, you think.
It's just like making a flower?
Sure. Everything's just like something else.
Oh.
Please
don't sing another song.
You see your dad softly puts his ukulele down. You see your mom goes, well, with a flower, you think, hey, what should that thing look like? And how would I make it? And what would I do? And you're thoughtful, and then you're real careful with it.
Okay, there's a really small thing that I sometimes have trouble communicating. But I think that these introductions are so hyper stylized that it's easier to sort of pick out of reacting and creating the world in an improvised manner, based on what your players say. And I struggle to communicate this when looking at something like Critical Role that's a little bit more, expanded, a little bit less, concise and succinct, because a lot of these things aren't as, I think, obvious when Matt is doing it, especially because he's not trying to, make as many jokes as Brennan, but the core of it is still there. Right here.
Down.
Right here.
Please don't sing another song.
You see your dad softly puts his ukulele.
When Zach says, please don't sing another song, and then Brennan narrates, oh, you see your dad slowly putting away the ukulele. I think it is very unlikely that his dad was going to sing another song. I really doubt that was what was going to happen. I don't think his dad was preparing the ukulele for the next song. But Brennan heard Zach say something funny and sort of characterize the scene in a funny, humorous way, and then created part of the world around that. He created this little, action that the dad was doing based off of what Zach gave him. That's I think a more inherent part of the collaborative process of D&D than most people give it credit for. I think when you say oh, you should listen to what your players say and partially create the world based on that, I think to some people it sounds maybe too adjacent to railroading, or it sounds like it'll be too contrived, I suppose. But I think this is a great, really concise example of that, of taking something that your player said or input and building out the world around that. It can be incredibly helpful, especially with people from their backstory. Of now, Zach has essentially communicated to Brennan an additional layer that he wants his parents to have, and Brennan rides along with that. So they have together gone about further characterizing Zach's character's parents.
Here in the neighborhood of Clearbrook, we now venture through the lofty woods and the shaded streets to the Abernant residence, where we find ourselves at the breakfast table with Mr. Angwin Abernant, Ms. Arianwen Abernant, Ms. Aylwin Abernant, and Miss Adine Abernant. At a small breakfast nook with crystalline windows, a small spinning elven pylon of pure runic magical energy, small unseen servants, little air elementals, whisk eggs and tea and other things like that to the table back and forth. You see that your father, the elven diplomat from Falinel, reads the paper and ruffles it. Your mother, a professor at Hudall, looks down at her tea and goes over her curriculum for the day. And your older sister, prim, proper, and perfect in her Hudall uniform, sits next to you.
Oh man, and this is a skill diff for me, of even the way that Brennan talks, even in his DM voice, because he's not voicing any of the characters right now, obviously. He is just describing the scene, but his DM voice of how he is communicating the environment is changing to reflect the tone of the environment. Which, like I said, fucking skill diff. Because that's a level of acting that I think everything about this, I just keep coming back to, wow, this is so efficient. And I think that people may hear efficient, me say that a bunch, and think that I mean that everything needs to be efficient. It absolutely doesn't. But there's a lot of very quick communication of ideas and general concepts that I think are communicating a lot to the players and the audience without Brennan having to explicitly say anything. And that's important because every word that the DM speaks is taking up time at the table, right? We have a finite amount of time in our sessions. It's like writing a book. Every word that you add is expanding that book and maybe changing if someone will read it. If the same book, if Ray Bradbury's The Martian Chronicles, which is a little bit over 240 pages, if this was 600 pages, but was communicating the exact same ideas, I think it would probably be less popular. I think that the fact that it is short is one of its selling points. And that is especially true when we're doing this collaboratively. If you're the DM every word that you speak is a word that a player doesn't get to speak, that someone else at the table doesn't get to speak. And that problem balloons if you have a bunch of players. Like Brennan here has 6, 2 over, I think, like the standard of 4. So Brennan has to be very concerned with how much sort of room, how much air he's taking up in the room. And putting this extreme inflection on his voice is a way to communicate the tone of her surroundings without having to actually communicate it. We get that it's snobby, that it's upper class, without him having to describe the light fixtures and the tables and the actual like architecture of the building. We get it, we get the point and we get the tone without him having to take up space with those words.
Set. Udall, but unfortunately I failed the entrance exam to get into the upper school because I had a little bit of panic attack. But Eggfort's good too. I'm happy to be at Eggfort. That's good. It's like actually I'm better at that practical applications of magic anyway, and I'm good. It's good. I'm excited to go.
Something that I immediately like about a lot of these character intros is that they are all communicating a flaw, with maybe the exception of Kristen Appleby's. Potentially her flaw is that she's like maybe too forgiving or like too patient or maybe a little bit confrontational about her beliefs. I don't know. I haven't quite like honed in on like what her like flawed behavior is supposed to be there. It was more about like her parents. Every other character, I'm immediately picking up on their kind of internal character flaw, which goes even more towards giving the other players at the table a lot to work with when they first meet. Like you can immediately, when one of the other player characters meets Gorguk, I think was Zach Oyama's character name. When they meet Gorguk, they're immediately going to be like, oh, I know a way to like generate drama and conflict, but also to generate like trust and togetherness and belief by playing off of those flaws in a very fun way. Now, that requires a lot of trust at the table. That requires Zach to trust that the other players are going to do interesting things with that knowledge. And so it might not be right to have this sort of situation at every table. If you have a group of players that are maybe new or just met, they might not have that inherent trust built up between each other to where you want to immediately expose like these flaws, especially given the fact that a lot of times our characters are kind of at least partial reflections of ourselves. So handling that flawed behavior might accidentally get too real if there's not a level of trust between the players.
You see that your father ducks away. You and Aelwyn start walking, and you see that she looks over at you and she says, "There was a mean trick with the vomit and all that. I don't ever cast spells at you."
Yes, you do all the time.
Well, mine are always funnier. They have an ironic sort of twist.
I cast Tasha's hideous laughter on them.
Make a saving throw, if you'd be so kind, for Tasha's hideous laughter.
Also, speaking of, improv-focused advice or improv-related advice, yes and whatever, that is a really good and poignant example of no and, where Brennan says, "I never cast, spells at you." And Siobhan says, "Yes, you do, all the time." And Brennan immediately takes that and says, "Well, mine are always funnier," which is a good example of him putting something out there. "I don't cast spells at you." Her saying, "No, you do." And then him taking that and saying, "Well, yes, but." That was a good example of no and then yes, but of you actually do cast spells at me all the time. And they're saying, "Yeah, but mine are funnier."
Look, Eggfort doesn't work like Udall, all right? So all the things about grades and tests and practicals and exams and all that, that's all out. It's a nonsense place. It's all topsy-turvy there, all right? They look differently on the sort of things that they value there. So the things that really, really work for that academy are sort of things that would be insane to do at Udall. I heard that one of the best ways to get into Arcane Society was to steal a book from the restricted section on your first day. That's something that they look at as, some kind of adventurer's initiative.
I do like that at least 2 of the characters so far, Siobhan's and Lou's, both have essentially personal quests once they get to school. Now, the only, I think, complicating factor there is that they are both things that have an amount of immediacy to them. So it's like the tryouts and this stealing a book thing. They are not things that are going to provide quest objectives for the entire party, especially like Lou's the tryout. It's not like he's going to like bring along Gorgux. Maybe the stealing the book, maybe Siobhan will say, oh, my character needs help, and she can wrap some of the other player characters into that. Right now it's very individualized, which is interesting, and even these kind of starting quest hooks are very individualized to just Siobhan and Lou, and I'm curious as to how they are going to loop everyone together.
Rad, you guys all arrive at the front of the school. What are you guys all doing here together?
I look around for the biggest and the strongest man or student in the kind of the entry area.
You look around. You see, Zach, what's Gorgug doing? He's the tallest person here.
I'm holding a metal flower. I'm like, just looking for a friend.
I walk straight up to Gorgug and I say, "Hey, how you doing, buddy?"
I'm good. It's my first day. I guess it's everyone's first day.
Oh, it's your first day.
Do you want this metal flower?
I swing it hitting as fucking hard as I possibly fucking can.
Dude, fucking speaking of, oh my God. You remember when I was like, man, it's so cool that they're talking about all of their like flaws, etc. out loud so that the other players can interact with it? Again, if they didn't have trust, if Lou and Zach did not, trust each other to handle this, and they didn't trust Brennan to handle it, then, this could go poorly. But because they do have the trust, this is fucking hilarious. Like, it's so, and I don't know if Brennan, planted the whole biggest guy there thing to facilitate this action. He could have. I also think it's reasonable he might not have, and that Lou is just hilarious. But Lou knows. Lou could have just ignored the whole go find the biggest guy there thing, and I can see the dots connecting in his head when Zach's character Gorgux is described as he is, and is all that. I don't know. I am such a fan of players. Again, players that you trust and that trust each other, knowing more information than their characters a lot of times. I know that people get very skittish about that for metagaming reasons, but I think that this could be argued that this is a layer of metagaming. Lou obviously knows how much this matters compared to how much, I think it's Fabian, compared to how much he knows it matters, right? Lou knows that this is funnier and more dramatic than Fabian knows how funny and dramatic it is. And I think that level of information on the player's part just allows for a lot of times more interesting stories, more dramatic, funnier, the whole list of adjectives.
All right, that's enough. And on day one, the bell hasn't even rung yet.
Effortlessly hoists you two up off the ground, sheathing his cricket bat before he does so, and goes, "Now look here, wait, what are you, freshmen? Why did this even start?"
Well,
I don't know. You hit me.
Well, I had to let this one know that I wasn't going to take any of his shit.
Shit, looks like he's holding a flower.
Hey, the greatest attackers sometimes put up a facade that they might sneak their way. I don't need to explain myself to you. I'm Fabian Seacaster.
You 100% need to explain yourself to me. I am Vice Principal Golden Horde.
I'm sorry I got mad at you. You can still have the flower if you want.
Don't give him the
That's a prank.
He has absolutely not earned any congeniality from you at all.
I hit him too, so
You hit
we're
him?
even.
All right, that's immediate detention for both of you. First day after school.
Okay.
Fine.
All right, so he gives you each a little red slip and says, good grief, is there any other nonsense happening here? Good, behave yourselves, and I'll see you at detention.
Oh, maybe. I feel like my brains, my memory cells are tingling. I feel like they all go into detention. And I feel like that's a very fair way to connect them all in this, kind of setup. No matter what the conceit is, and I'm very happy to be proven wrong here, but I think that there needs to be something to connect the party members. Traditionally, that is them having actual connections. Either like a chain of connections between them, a common goal, a common patron, some wider organization that teams them up ahead of time. But you can also have a wider organization team them up in time. You can, and I think that's what this is going to be. That still requires an amount of setup. I'm guessing, this is speculation, that Brennan might have just told them ahead of time, like, hey, not gonna tell you anything, maybe just get into some trouble. Maybe just, do something that might get you some negative attention. And that is enough. If you want this kind of separated start, but you want them all to come together, you can say, hey, get into some trouble. They all get detention. Boom, now they're together. Something probably happens in detention that very Breakfast Club-esque that draws them together as a party.
And I kind of run like a lot of the clubs, like yearbook and stuff here. So if you need any help learning the ropes or learning about the school at all, I'm happy to do that. And this is my boyfriend, Dane Blade, who's the captain of the Blood Rush team.
Dane, you are freaking cool, man.
What's up?
You seem cool as hell.
What's up?
Yeah.
Dude?
Yeah.
Oh, sure, dude. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Do you play Blood Rush?
Mm-hmm. Go Owlbears, right? That's the team?
You see a huge, beefy-looking half-orc, either a junior or a senior in a leather jacket comes over and slaps Dane on the back and says, yeah, he fucking plays Blood Rush. He's the ball, dude. He's the fucking ball, dude. He's the fucking ball, dude.
I'm actually not the ball.
You're the ball. That's your fucking name now. You're the ball.
It's actually Riz Gukak, if you'd like some literature. And I open my briefcase again.
Make an opposed athletics check, if he's okay.
Oh no, it's a -2.
A 4! You see that this half-orc grabs you and stuffs you as a ball and just dunks you into a trash can. Boom! That's what's up, dude. You're the ball now. Everybody, this kid's name is Ball. If I hear you call this kid anything but Ball, it's your fucking ass.
I suppose I'm technically the ball this time, but not always.
You see, Penelope goes like, Dane, get him to stop. And you see he goes, huh? Oh, sure. Hey, Rog. Dude, it's chill. And you see Rog goes, yeah, okay. Sorry, dude, just I see people fuck with you and it makes me want to go fucking nuts, dude.
Oh, man, again, I hate to keep using this word, but I think it's appropriate, especially for a session 1. It's very efficient. And I don't even think that, in a limited series, it all has to be efficient. But it's good, I think, especially in a limited series, but for any session 1, to help everyone kind of get their bearings, get a initial lay of the land. And he's not doing it with all of them. But especially with Adine, with Kristen, with Riz, he introduces a potential ally and then almost immediately a potential adversary. So it's like Riz, he introduced Penelope, who seemed to legitimately actually like him. She told the guys to stop bullying the ball. And then he introduces Rog, who makes him the ball. And then we transition over to Adine. And this is one of the most interesting parts about it, is that different people are adversaries or allies to different members of the cast. So to Adine, Penelope becomes the adversary. And then while Penelope is kind of making, the passive-aggressive kind of subtle remarks to Adine, you see Dane, the cool kid, whatever, suddenly correct her grammar, which is funny, obviously, but also potentially kind of puts him in with Adine, with Siobhan, because she is this very proper character, and he is explicitly contesting his girlfriend, who he theoretically has this bond with, when she is being adversarial, essentially putting him on an alliance side of Adine. Then you bring up Coach Daybreak, the Blood Rush coach, who has this ally relationship with Kristen Appleby's, who is then immediately followed up with Zane Darkshadow fucking pushing her to the ground. when I was originally going to, like, when I first paused this, I was going to be like, damn, what an aggressive school. But they're like speed running. Here are some allies. Here are some adversaries. And they're not all so adversarial or so allied that like things couldn't shift and morph. But Brennan is really laying a groundwork here for a lot of the characters. Now, Adine and Riz also already have their quest lines. They're like personal quest lines, so these allies could work into that. But Kristen didn't ostensibly have any sort of like instant personal quest. So her being presented with Zane Darkshadow, this person who is so like ostensibly diametrically opposed to her beliefs, not only introduces an adversary, but also kind of introduces a personal quest for her to convert Zane, because she has that like very missionary coded style and character.
Perhaps we're very tough and we can sustain a lot of injuries, but we need somebody who is very good at hurting people there with us as well. Perhaps we need a sneaky person to sneak. Not always. Sometimes you don't need that. But occasionally, in circumstances where you do need one, you really need one, right? With traps or other things like that. That is the meaning of party. And party is the meaning of hero. Never forget, all of you. Oh, that's bad. Never forget that the greatest magic of all is chronomancy, the magic of time. Welcome to your first year, freshman. At the Eggfort Adventuring Academy! He turns into light, disappears.
What was the thing he said at the end?
The greatest magic of all is chronomancy.
Chronomancy, the magic of time. That was the only specific thing he said the entire time. The most powerful magic is chronomancy, the magic of time. I'm not saying that it's foreshadowing. I would never say that. I am saying that it's literally the only thing with any amount of substance or concreteness that Arthur said that. Actually, he said the most powerful magic is chronomancy and that the tea is bad. You know what? We'll write it down. Fuck it. The tea was bad. I think it was tea. I don't know. He made a tea-like gesture when drinking it. So the most powerful magic is chronomancy. The tea was bad. Those are the two things that I feel like. Oh, and adventurers murder people, but I already knew that.
You know, you might be right. There may not be much for you to learn here. But you know what? It's not going to hurt you to go see what the bullshit is they're selling, right? Why not go check in on the enemy, see what all the squares are talking about?
Shit, there's so many good role models here. I'm gonna take you up on that.
Hey, you're a real sweet kid. Come back anytime.
I will. I bet I'll come back once a day.
All right. Oh, because you eat lunch in this room.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, you
Yeah.
have a good one, sweetie.
Okay, bye,
You
Doreen.
can call me Doreen.
Okay, bye,
Mwah.
Doreen.
Introducing a ally, but I'll be real. She's we'll see. She's given me real, like, Disney princess's parents at the beginning of the movie vibes, where, like, she's too nice to survive. She's, like, way too cool and supportive, especially for Fig. Like, Fig is not going to have, like, a happy, triumphant time here. I don't think. Maybe she will. I think Dorian's dying in the next 2 episodes.
I come up.
You walk up in the hall, yeah.
Hey, are you okay?
I saw what you did, and I thought it was pretty
Oh
awesome.
God, no, the goth kid thinks I'm cool.
That was so cool.
Oh, I like your giant orb. Here, let me make it glow. I cast light on her giant orb.
You're now glowing in the middle of a crowd of children. You see that Vice Principal Golden Horde walks up and goes, "Very nice use of a light cantrip. What is your name, young student?"
Oh, I'm Kristen Applebee's.
Kristen Applebee's. Wonderful to meet you. I'm Vice Principal Golden Horde.
Oh, hi.
Young lady, are you all right?
I found this book.
You found it? Make a bluff check for me with disadvantage.
What's this? What's
You
the
roll
disadvantage?
2d20 and take the worst result.
Okay, great.
Again, I find myself wanting to highlight the amount of, like, fun and shenanigans and interest that can be derived from the players knowing things that their characters shouldn't know. Kristen Appleby's obviously does not know how Adine feels about the orb. She obviously does not know that she does not want to be caught doing this. She does not know that attention is the last thing that Adine wants right now. But Allie Beardsley does know all of that. And so the light cantrip does make sense in fiction, but it's probably not something that Allie would have thought to do if she was not aware of all of Adine's character that Kristen is not aware of.
Oh my god, a 20 and a 2. It's just a 2.
It's just a 2, I'm afraid.
Wow.
You see that Vice Principal says, "Sorry, you found a book."
She's covering for me. I stole it, and she caught me
No, I
stealing
didn't.
it.
I didn't. She didn't steal. I stole it. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I'm new. I don't know what I'm doing.
We all fall short of the grace of God.
Yeah, I wouldn't. That's a bit strong for this, I would say. That's a bit strong. This is not appropriate that you've done this. Kristen, would you mind taking the book to Principal Aidforth's office for me?
Yeah, sure.
Go ahead, take the book. You see that he looks at you and says, now, young lady, what is your name?
Adine Abinant.
Miss Abinant. Oh, yes, you've come to us from Hudon. I'm afraid I'm going to have to give you detention. So, you'll be staying late after school today. You understand? All right. This is not fun for me. You're clearly having a bad time. I'm second-guessing what I'm doing, even as I'm doing it, wondering if there's some medical stuff going on that I don't know about. But I'm going to do it, because I've already talked out loud, and other students can hear this.
Yeah,
So
I can hear it all. Hi.
Hey, for real? We're not going to do this.
I always need to do a supercut of this. Brennan's NPCs so far do not talk like people. I don't even think that they're caricatures. I think I used that word last time of they're caricatures of an NPC or of a person. They're not. Golden Horde, I mean, some of them are, but Golden Horde does not seem to be an explicit caricature in the way that I normally think about that. He seems to have an amount of depth to him, but the way that he talks and interacts, at least at first, is very unreal. It's very unrealistic, and I think that it is doing a good job of conveying the deeper reality of who this NPC is very quickly. Very, very quickly. And I would bet, if I was a betting man, which I'm not, but if I was, I would bet that as the show goes on, the NPCs will start to talk less ridiculously. They will start to talk more real as we come to learn them, right? They are talking this way as a very quick way of Brennan getting us up to speed on who they are, of communicating their mannerisms and all of these things that we cannot see because we're not there. we're not the characters. We can't see their body language, and the tones are not going to be exact. We can't understand their physicality, at least to an exact degree. And so this sort of unreality in their speech allows us to sort of get up to speed on who they are in a way that the characters probably would be able to, even if they were talking more really, just because they can actually, perceive them as a entity, as a real entity, not a character that an actor is playing.
The coach sets up this scrimmage where you're going to make, the idea is for you to pass to somebody, basically, you're sort of quarterbacking effectively. As you get started, go ahead and make me a perception check real quick.
Critical failure.
Critical failure. Cool.
That's so funny. 20 to 1.
20 to 1. So you get
Such a
set up.
great bounty.
Now go ahead and make me an athletics check.
Great. That's what I prefer. 22.
Fuck yeah. He gets you the ball. He's like, we want to see how you pass. I'm gonna roll a little opposed check. Okay. He sets you up. You survey the field, and you see a bunch of people that you could pass to. But all the people that you could pass to are kind of losers that you just fucking either clotheslined or rope-a-doped or moved around.
Of course.
As the lines charge each other, you see a little opening that you could break through.
Oh, I'll take it.
You charge forward. Your team looks like What the fuck is going on? You effortlessly dodge and weave through all.
Ooh, okay. Because I was getting nervous for a moment because obviously Lou failed the perception check and then succeeded the athletics check. And the way that Brennan was starting to kind of go down that path, I was a bit worried that he was going to kind of prescribe action for Fabian that maybe Lou would or would not want, because he was making a lot of judgments from Fabian's perspective of, hey, you are looking and you are seeing a bunch of losers, a bunch of, people you just wrote. Like, that is a value statement that is based on Fabian's opinion, which is okay. It's okay. But to then, if like, when Lou rolled, the original roll was, hey, under the assumption that Lou was going to try to, or that Fabian was going to try to pass the ball, which is the, ostensible point of the trial. If it was then narrated that Brennan is assuming some of Fabian's opinions and prescribing different action than Lou thought was going to happen when he rolled, based on those subjective perceptions, I would have been very not in favor of that. But, big asterisk. Not even an asterisk, big but. Brennan doesn't do that. He gives Lou a choice. He describes all of this, and he even does some value judgments based on, like, what Brennan thinks Fabian's perspective would be and Fabian's opinions would be. But at the end of the day, he gives Lou the autonomy to actually take action as Fabian. So if maybe Lou kind of under the hood doesn't really think that Fabian would like think those things or, would maybe hold those opinions, he doesn't have to like interrupt the DM to say that. He can just sort of act differently. He can act however he wants because Brennan gives him the option, do you take the gap or not? And assumingly not would have gone on with the original kind of thing that Lou thought he was rolling for, passing it.
You see that the guy, the tiefling, sort of looks over, and he's looking at Penelope with that face of like a weirdo adult hanging out at high school, just like, you're not the person I'm dating, and I have no facial expressions. I'm watching you. It's like,
Right.
You see that.
I guess I'll sneak up behind him, and I'll tap on his back.
His arms are engulfed with green flame, and he turns around and says, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa! Watch the jacket, kid."
Sorry.
You have any idea who you're talking to?
Johnny.
Johnny Spells.
Do you go here?
See, he puts on sunglasses. Hell no, I don't go here.
No?
No, it's my girlfriend. You see that Sam waves and says, "Hi, can I help you?"
I'm friends with your friend. And I point to the cheerleader girl.
See, Penelope says, "Oh my God, are you the ball from earlier?"
I turn to Johnny Spells. They call me Ball.
Why do they call you ball?
Because I'd ball, dude.
I don't believe that.
Ball.
I don't believe
I
you.
get shoved in a garbage can, okay, man?
Tough.
Yeah.
I know what it's like to get shit on.
So where are you from, man? I live at the Strong Tower Luxury Apartments, just me and my mom.
Where I'm from is the same place I'm going, buddy. Nowhere.
Hate him in the best way. Oh, I hate Johnny Spells. God. He's fucking gross, dude. There were, yeah. Any adults that like hang around high schools fucking weird me the fuck out. And I know that there are people that will defend it's like, oh, but if they were like dating in high school and then one of them graduated, whatever. I have a couple like that in my family. He never went around the high school because he thought it was weird. They were only like separated for like 1 year. It was like a senior junior situation. And then he graduated. Never went to the high school because it was weird. Oh, I hate Johnny Spells, but I love him, but I hate him. I love that I hate him.
Okay, so you've got a lot of jewels, and I can tell that you like stuff. I will give you my freaking briefcase if you'll go into that changing room and tell me what those girls are saying. I think one of them has a crush on one of my friends.
You see, she says, "Your briefcase?"
Okay, what do you want? What do you want?
You see that she says, I don't know, like, give me 20 gold pieces.
Okay. What if is there anything from the school you want? I'll take something for you.
She says, okay, yeah, Steal me like a tea bag of that gross tea that Principal Eggford is always drinking.
Yeah, sure. Okay, will you go in there now?
Go get me the tea bag.
Fine. Okay, I run off to go find a tea bag.
Cool. You find Principal Eggford's office. Go ahead and tell me how you're getting in. The door is locked.
I like how it ended up. And I also like what initiated it. I like time-limited stuff. They are very clearly having an important conversation that is specifically incredibly applicable to Riz. So time-limited stuff, great, because it forces him into situations that he potentially wouldn't be in otherwise. Like if he could just go and find a party member because there was no time-limited anything, he wouldn't be forced to interact with a different NPC who potentially has their own goals and motives. Especially because Riz doesn't have detention yet. So he needs detention. We need him to interact with people other than the party, because it's unlikely that the party are going to get each other into detention, with Gorgug and Fabian being the exception. So, first, time limited. They're going to talk right now. They go into the girls' bathroom, or changing room. Easy way, if he's a creep, detention, easy. Honestly, thankfully, Riz isn't a creep. That would have been a little weird to follow. And so you go to this Ostentatia Wallace. She immediately offers gold. Don't love that. I think I've talked about, the economy in any D&D setting. It's so easy to get wrong or to get messed up over the course of things. However, I think in this case for Brennan, this wasn't a legitimate offer. I don't think that Like this is the first episode. Brennan knows exactly how much gold Brian Murphy's Riz would have. And we have explicitly established that Riz and his mom are kind of struggling for money. They are not, in the money. And so offering gold, I don't think was a real offer. It was to push Riz more into desperation to potentially get him to do something bad, like go and steal a teabag. And again, I think we run into a situation where even a slight encouragement of, hey, get into some trouble, could lead Brian down this more risky path with Riz and ultimately facilitate him getting detention. This is not, by the way, none of this is me even coming close. I want to make it clear. I'm not trying to imply that this is scripted. I don't think that any of this is scripted. I think there might have been slight encouragements of hey, try to get into some trouble, or, just that, even that minor of an encouragement. Or even beyond that, they might just pick up what Brennan's putting down. By the time that he gives detention to 3 of them, I think the rest of them can pretty quickly pick up that they're all supposed to get detention, because they all know in the back of their heads that they need to come together somehow. They are not unwitting, unwilling participants in this whole, sequence and production. The second thing that I really like, parlaying off of that, is that Ostentatia asks for a favor rather than exchanging just straight monetary bullshit, right? She asks him to perform a task that she cannot undertake. That's amazing. It both gets the player something that they want, player/character, something that they want, and it allows them to utilize their unique skill sets in order to get that thing. It makes that thing feel earned, and it makes it feel very directly earned, right? Gold is this strange, money in general is a store of value. So you do something and you kind of store the value of that thing that you did in the money, which you can then give to someone else later. It explicitly separates your efforts and your work from the ultimate value that is derived from those efforts and work, which isn't as satisfying. Like performing an action and getting direct value from it, real actual value, the thing that you really want at the end of the day, doing effort for that thing is more directly satisfying and gratifying than performing an action for money and then paying for the thing that you want with money. So I really like in D&D and TTRPGs for that to be represented, doing things for favors or doing a favor for a thing rather than doing it for money and then exchanging that money, later on.
Cobs of corn with malevolent eyes and wide mouths, tearing at the walls and ripping the banners. And far at the end of the cafeteria, you see Doreen, the lunch lady, with her back turned to you, slowly gazing behind her shoulder, deep sunken eyes, malevolent yellow, as spell energy, pulsating with arcane power, wraps around her ladle.
Hey kids, it's lunchtime. Again, because we had lunch earlier. But bad lunch this time.
She's giving me real, like, Disney princess's parents at the beginning of the movie vibes, where, like, she's too nice to survive. I think Dorian's died in the next 2 episodes.
I feel like if you have to explain the
last
joke,
time.
it's not a good joke.
It's a bad lunch. It's a bad lunch.
No!
A monstrous, pulsating mountain of creamed corn rises up, towering behind her. A colossal ooze begins to form. Pseudopod glides way forward. And I'm gonna need all of you guys to roll initiative.
Okay.
And that's where we'll leave off this week on Fantasy High.
Woo! Okay. Doreen's she's the corn person? She's the cornomancer? Do you think that was the foreshadowing? Do you think that when Arthur said that the most powerful magic is chronomancy, it's a stupid joke about cornomancy? Because that would be very funny. Okay, shit. Maybe I remembered something happening to Doreen. Clearly. I did not remember that she was evil. That she was an evil cornomancer. Cornomancer. Okay, and leaving off at the very top of the round. Now, I have said this before. I'm not a huge fan of ending on initiative because I think that it makes the, like, build up into the next session a little bit stilted, personally. I think that, like, combat is a time where players are very, like, in their sheets. They're not, like, role-playing and, like, being their characters. And at the beginning of every session, there's going to be an amount of, like, warm-up time where, like, the players aren't, like, quite into playing their characters yet. And by starting in combat, you essentially, like, elongate that warm-up time. That's like a broad opinion that I have, but I also recognize that, like, it's not that big a deal. And especially for like a media product, like a show, the roll initiative might be a little bit stronger of like a cliffhanger, like a hook. I would have ended it like right at the scream, but that's just me. But cool. Good session. Good episode 1. I liked it a lot. I think there's a lot of stuff going on. We got a lot of I think not necessarily foreshadowing, but a lot of, like, disparate hooks. I think that it was very, I use the word efficient a lot. I need to come up with a better word. But I think it was very good at, like, really rapidly onboarding us into the story and the environment and the frankly, a lot of characters. And a lot of characters that I actually feel like I remember fairly well. We'll see whenever I film episode 2, I guess how well I remember them. I'm very excited to see where it goes as well. Because they're going to have this fight, which will immediately kind of set them apart, like gain them some, at least a degree of notoriety. And it'll be interesting to see how that notoriety is handled, because that's like an especially complicated thing for like a high school story, where you want the characters to overcome challenges and do cool and interesting things. And is it going to be revealed that, like, oh yeah, like, evil lunch lady, that's a thing that happens? Like, is Penelope and, like, Blaine, or what was it Blaine? Not Blaine. Dane Blade. Sorry. Are Penelope and Dane gonna be like, oh yeah, like, evil lunch lady, passe, whatever. Or are they not going to believe that freshmen did this? They're going to think that, like, Mr. Gibbons is hyperbolizing. Like, how exactly is that going to be handled? I think that's the thing. Is it going to be normal? In which case, to a degree, that kind of lowers the accomplishment? Or is it going to be abnormal? In which case, how do they deal with being the freshman that did the abnormal thing? Very, fucking Harry Potter fame. And that's it. thank you so much for joining. I hope that you enjoyed and are looking forward to the next episode. I know I am. If this is your first time on the channel and you like this sort of style of watching something and talking about it thoroughly, I also watch Critical Role every Wednesday and Sunday live, so I actually can talk back and forth with chat, which is really fun, and you should come and join. Thank you again. And there's people coming home. I'll see you later. Goodbye.